My name is Walter Harlan, and I am 62 years old. I served 35 years as a warehouse supervisor at Davis Freight and Transport in Akron, Ohio. My back has more stories than most novels, and my knees creak like old porch steps when I get out of bed. But I never complained. Not once. I worked, paid off a house, raised 2 children, and loved my wife, Delilah, since the day we met at a high school carnival in '78. She was fire and laughter. I was quiet and steady. Opposites, but we made it work. At least I thought we did. I used to believe love meant showing up, providing, being the rock no one notices but everyone depends on. Turns out rocks get stepped on. It was my birthday, my 62nd. A quiet dinner at the house. Me, Delilah, our daughter Janine, our son Clay, and his new wife Tina. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, candles Delilah insisted were just for ambience. I thought she still cared. Halfway through dessert, I was telling a story from work. One of the last few days before retirement, when Delilah leaned back in her chair, laughed out loud, and said it. How does it feel to be a loser, Walt? The room went silent. Janine looked like someone had slapped her. Clay tried to play it off with an awkward chuckle, but Tina froze mid-bite. I turned my eyes toward Delilah. She swirled her wine glass, that crooked smirk on her lips, and added, "Seriously, you're about to retire, your pension's a joke, and this house is the only thing you've got to your name. You spend your whole life playing it safe. And for what?" I could feel my face heat up, but not with shame, with something colder. Realization. That wasn't the wine talking. That was her truth. It had been marinating in her for years, and tonight, it just spilled out. So I smiled. Not big, not fake, just enough to hold the storm inside. And I asked, "Tell me, Delilah, how long have you been practicing that speech?" That wiped the grin off her face. Tina excused herself awkwardly and went to check on something in the kitchen. Janine lowered her eyes. Clay cleared his throat and reached for more mashed potatoes like the table wasn't cracking in half. Delilah leaned in, still trying to keep the upper hand. "I'm just being honest. Somebody has to be." "Then let's be honest," I said. "Go ahead. Lay it out." She paused, just a second too long, because part of her thought I'd break. Part of her wanted me to, but I didn't. Not that night. Not anymore. The rest of the meal went on like a bad church service. Silent, stiff, with everyone pretending nothing had happened. I watched her, the way she kept sipping her wine, avoiding my eyes. That wasn't a slip of the tongue. That was a slip of the mask. Later, when the guests were gone, and Clay awkwardly offered to take the leftovers home, I stood alone in the driveway, watching their car taillights disappear into the dark. Delilah didn't say goodnight. She didn't apologize. She just went upstairs, humming some old tune I used to love. I sat on the couch that night and stared at the wedding photo on the mantle. We were 24, broke, smiling. She had daisies in her hair. I had a tie 2 sizes too big. We had nothing, but I thought we had everything. Turns out, I was the only one who thought that. Around 11:47 p.m., I walked into the kitchen. Delilah had left her phone on the counter, screen still lit up with a text. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. "He doesn't suspect a thing. You were right. He'll probably just fade into retirement like the good little dog he's always been." The message was from a name I didn't recognize. TK. The rest of the thread was locked, password protected, but the damage was done. She had been talking about me, mocking me, and someone else had been helping her do it. I didn't rage, didn't slam the phone or storm upstairs. Instead, I walked outside, stood barefoot on the cold back porch, just breathing in the night air. And right there, under the same stars I used to show Janine when she was 6, I whispered, "Okay, now it begins." You see, I'd spent 40 years giving time, giving grace, giving love, giving up. But that night, something changed in me. Not into hatred, not into revenge, into resolve. She wanted to know how it felt to be a loser? Well, I was about to show her how a loser rises, and she wouldn't see it coming. Before my wife called me a loser, before she laughed at me like I was nothing but an old coat she was ready to toss in a donation pile, I was Walt Harlan, the man who built her world. From scratch. We met the summer I turned 19. She was working the lemonade booth at the county fair, barefoot, wild-haired, bossing customers around like she ran the whole town. I was delivering hay in my uncle's old Ford with a cracked windshield and more rust than paint. But the first time I saw her smile at me, the world got quiet. She was loud, radiant, reckless. I was quiet, focused, cautious. And somehow, that balance worked for a while. I gave her the kind of love you carve out of your own bones. The kind that shows up, that stays. I fixed her car when she wrecked it backing out of the grocery store. I patched drywall when she cracked it throwing a picture frame during a fight we never talked about afterward. I forgave her for spending too much when I was working doubles. Not because I was weak, but because I loved her. That was my first mistake. I took every overtime shift I could find during our first 10 years of marriage. I was up at 5, back at 7, barely had time to eat, then off to weekend side gigs fixing fences or painting porches for neighbors just to save enough for a down payment on a house. Delilah stayed home with Janine and Clay. Said she was tired of always being tired. I didn't argue. I figured my job was to carry the load. And if I could carry it all, why not? We bought the house on Longspur Lane in 1993. 3 bedrooms, sloped backyard, big enough for a family, small enough to feel safe. I remember watching her step into that empty kitchen the first time, touching the counter like it was treasure. She turned to me and said, "You gave me this, Walt. No one's ever given me something real before." And I believed her. But over time, something shifted. At first, it was little things. A sigh when I walked in the door. Cold dinners. Jokes about how boring I was. How predictable. I thought it was stress. Kids. Life. But by our 25th anniversary, her laughter at my expense had become a regular event. Her friends, those slick women with plastic smiles and wine in their purses, started joking too. "Walt, you still driving that rust bucket?" "Delilah, how do you live with a man who doesn't know what TikTok is?" She'd laugh along. I'd smile, nod, play the fool. Because for a while, I thought maybe that was love growing old. But real love doesn't humiliate. It holds. I noticed her texting more at night. I come into the room, and she'd flip her phone over like she was guarding state secrets. If I asked who it was, she'd sigh like I was paranoid and say, "Janine," or "someone from church." Except it wasn't. I know that now. Because after her cruel comment at the dinner table, I did something I never thought I'd do. I snooped. I went through our phone bill. Every number, every timestamp. There it was. That number. TK. Frequent, daily, late-night messages. Sometimes while I was asleep upstairs. I looked it up. Not Janine. Not anyone from her church group. It belonged to Tyler Kent. You know who Tyler Kent is? He's a real estate agent. Mid-40s. Drives a Range Rover. Used to be the hot shot in high school who flunked out of community college and now sells overpriced homes to divorced women in gated communities. I knew the name. Delilah once mentioned him in passing at a school fundraiser. "He's charming," she'd said. I didn't think twice. Until now. The worst part wasn't that she had someone else. The worst part was that she'd chosen him to laugh about me with. That her betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was personal. Public. Mean. She wanted out. She just didn't have the courage to say it. Or maybe she was waiting for me to die quietly in my recliner so she could keep the house, the pension, the story she tells at brunch about how hard she worked to keep the family together. Except that story isn't hers. It's mine. That night, after I confirmed everything, I didn't confront her. Not yet. You see, I'm done reacting. I've done enough forgiving, enough excusing, enough shrinking. Now, I'm planning. Quietly. Carefully. And when I'm done, they'll all know who the real loser is. The first step? I made a visit to the bank the next morning. Opened a new account. Moved half the retirement funds under my name only. Legal. Clean. Quiet. The second? I called Janine. Told her I needed to talk. Just the two of us. She was hesitant, nervous. Said she felt bad about the other night. I didn't know what to say when Mom joked like that, she admitted. She wasn't joking, I replied. She was rehearsing. Janine didn't ask what I meant, but she agreed to come by Sunday. Good, because what I'm about to share with her will change everything she thought she knew about her mother, and maybe even about me. In the days that followed, Delilah acted like nothing had happened. She played the role, made coffee, went to the gym, laughed on the phone, but she never once apologized for what she said at my birthday dinner. Because in her mind, she didn't say anything wrong. And that's how I know she's gone, emotionally, spiritually, long before I ever looked at that phone. But I'm not mourning her anymore. I'm remembering me, the man who built this house, the man who raised 2 children, the man who sacrificed quietly while others took loudly, the man she forgot she married. Let her keep laughing, because soon I'll be the one standing tall, without bitterness, just truth. And when that truth finally arrives, it'll be quiet, but it'll shake the whole damn table. Janine came over Sunday afternoon. She brought that lemon loaf I liked, the one Delilah never learned to bake even after I asked her for it 3 birthdays in a row. It used to come from the bakery down on 6th Street. Now, Janine bakes it herself. Said she learned during the pandemic when life slowed down and she finally had time to try recipes instead of just surviving. She walked in wearing a soft green sweater and her usual worried eyes. She looked older than 34, worn, like life had been asking too much of her lately. We sat in the den. I poured tea. She poured questions into the silence. Dad, what's going on? I didn't waste time. Janine, your mother has been talking to another man. A lot. His name is Tyler Kent. She blinked hard. You're sure? I nodded. Phone records. Messages. And that comment at my birthday dinner. That wasn't a joke. That was contempt. And contempt doesn't grow overnight. She was quiet. Too quiet. I waited. Then she said, I always wondered. That hit harder than I expected. You did. She nodded slowly. She used to say things when she thought we weren't listening. About how you were boring. How she could have had more. I never took it seriously. I thought maybe she was just unhappy with herself. She was, I said, and I spent 40 years trying to fix a hole in her that I didn't put there. Janine looked down. Her fingers trembled slightly as she held her tea. There's something I never told you, she whispered, from when you had your heart episode. That was 3 years ago. I collapsed in the backyard while fixing the downspout. The world went black, then came back with fluorescent lights and the beeping of monitors. I had a mild heart attack. The doctor said it was stress. Said I dodged a bullet. Told me to slow down, rest, eat better. Delilah visited twice. Each time, she scrolled her phone more than she looked at me. I thought she was just scared, or maybe uncomfortable with hospitals. But Janine, she saw more. I was there when the doctor came in with your test results, she said. He said you needed rest, low-stress environment, maybe consider early retirement. You weren't awake yet. Mom pulled him into the hallway. I followed. She paused. Her throat tightened. She asked if your condition could accelerate naturally without intervention. Like, if she didn't do much, would it just take care of itself? My chest tightened, but not from the memory, from the clarity. I stared at her. She asked the doctor if I might just die. Janine nodded, eyes glistening. And when he said, not if we treat it properly, she sighed, like she was disappointed. I closed my eyes, not out of pain, out of confirmation. All those little signs, her checking the life insurance paperwork, pushing me to sign over power of attorney just in case, refusing to help with bills while I recovered, it wasn't just neglect. It was a quiet wish for an ending. I opened my eyes and met Janine's. I'm not mad you didn't tell me. I was scared, she whispered. Scared of breaking the family. Scared you'd think I was trying to turn you against her. You were just protecting me, I said. But it's time I protect myself. The next morning, I call my lawyer, Miriam Chavez. She's 68, sharp as a scalpel, and doesn't waste words. When I told her what I needed, she nodded slowly. Walter, you've been the quiet backbone of this family. But spines break too. Let's make sure yours stays intact. She helped me rewrite the will. Remove Delilah as beneficiary. Transfer the house to a living trust with Janine and Clay as equal co-owners, with one catch. Delilah Harlan shall forfeit all inheritance and claims to the estate upon evidence of adultery, abuse, or abandonment. Miriam smiled. We'll call it the self-removal clause. Let her make the decision for us. I also asked her to help me open a private trust, one Delilah didn't know about. Into it, I began transferring pieces of my savings. Slowly, legally, quietly. This wasn't revenge. This was protection, because the man she laughed at, he was building an escape route, and she'd never even smelled the smoke. That week, I started living like a man with a secret. Not shame, power. I'd mow the lawn while Delilah gabbed on the phone with Tyler Kent in the sunroom. She thought I couldn't hear. I could. Every giggle, every flirty whisper. I'd leave notes in the kitchen, simple things like, thanks for dinner, or out picking up dog food. Polite, normal, because I wanted her comfortable, unaware. One night, I walked past the bathroom while she was inside on speakerphone. He asked her, so when are we making this official? She sighed, when the house is mine. Just be patient. Walt's too soft to fight. I stood outside the door, calm as rain. I wasn't soft. I was ready. That Friday, I left a folder on the kitchen table. Inside, a copy of the new will, the trust, the clause, and a sticky note. I may not be loud, Delilah, but I am not blind, and I am not yours anymore. Walt. Then I left, just for the day. Went fishing with Jonah down by the lake. When I came home, she was gone. The closet was half empty. A single post-it stuck to the mirror. You'll regret this. But I didn't, because regret is for people who didn't try. And I tried. I gave her everything. All she gave me was an awakening. Cliffhanger, end of chapter 3. The morning after Delilah left, the house felt lighter. Not quiet, not lonely, lighter. Like someone had lifted a soaked wool blanket off my shoulders. The kind of silence you feel in your bones when there's finally space to breathe again. I made coffee like always, black, no sugar. The kitchen still had her scent, that sharp perfume she wore like armor. But her shoes weren't by the door. Her laughter wasn't echoing through the hall. Her wine glass wasn't sitting in the sink. And I didn't miss any of it. Not anymore. By noon, I got a text from Clay. Mom called me. Said you kicked her out. What's going on, Dad? Typical. She ran to him first. Not Janine, not even her sister who lived 2 towns over. She went to Clay, because he was always her golden boy. The one she coddled, protected, manipulated. And to be fair, he let her. All his life. I called her back. Told him to meet me at the diner on 4th. The one we used to go to after Little League games. He hesitated, but agreed. He showed up in a dress shirt, slacks, and that stiff energy he always wore when he was uncomfortable. Hey, Dad. Clay. We sat. I ordered coffee. He didn't. He was too busy fidgeting with his phone. Finally, I said it. She's been cheating on me, Clay, for a long time. He swallowed hard. I didn't know that. I believe you, I said. But you know something wasn't right. You've known for a while. He didn't deny it. Instead, he leaned back and stared at the chipped Formica table. She said you were losing it, he said. That you were paranoid, controlling, that you were cutting her off from the money because you were afraid of being alone. I laughed, bitterly. She's not the one who's been afraid all these years, son. Clay looked up, and finally I saw it, the doubt. The same doubt that lived inside me for years. That nagging whisper you push down when you're not ready to face the truth. I needed to hear it from you, he said quietly. I wanted to believe she was just unhappy, not cruel. She's both, I said, and now she's gone. He didn't say much after that, but when the check came, he reached for it. I stopped him. No, I said, this one's on me, but I do want something in return. What's that? Honesty. 2 days later, Clay showed up at the house with a duffel bag and tired eyes. Tina kicked me out for defending Mom, he said. Said I always excuse bad behavior, that I don't see how you've been the one holding things together. I stepped aside, told him he could stay for a while. He stood in the entryway like a kid again, like he wasn't sure where he belonged. You don't have to earn your place here, Clay, I said. You just have to be real. That broke something in him, and maybe healed something too. The next week was quiet. Clay helped with chores, fixed the leaky faucet in the guest bath, took long walks in the evening, thinking. I gave him space. And in that silence, our relationship started to mend. Not with big speeches, but with presence. Then Delilah showed up. It was a Friday afternoon. I was on the porch, reading. Clay was in the garage. She pulled up in Tyler Kent's Range Rover, of course. She stepped out in sunglasses and anger, heels clicking like gunshots. I want to talk, she said. You're not welcome here. Her jaw clenched. You can't keep me from my home, Walt. I didn't. You walked away. You don't get to rewrite history. She stormed up the steps. I want my name back on the deed. I stood, steady, calm. You saw the trust documents. The clause. You made your choice. This is punishment. No, I said. This is accountability. She scoffed. Tyler has lawyers, real ones. You'll regret cutting me out of everything. I smiled. You'll find the courts don't look kindly on adultery and attempted elder manipulation. Her face paled. You kept everything. No, I said. I kept what I earned. You're the one who lost everything. Then I stepped back inside and shut the door. I didn't yell. I didn't slam it, but the sound was final. Clay watched the whole thing from the window. He didn't say a word, just nodded. And that night, after dinner, he said, "You know, I always thought I was her favorite, but I think I was just a reflection. You were the foundation." I didn't cry, but I wanted to, because for the first time in years, my son saw me, not as the background, not as the fallback plan, but as the man I always try to be. Over the next few weeks, I heard through the grapevine that Delilah was spiraling. Tyler dumped her when the money disappeared. She tried to move in with her sister. That lasted 3 days. She even reached out to Janine, who blocked her number. You can only burn so many bridges before you're standing on an island with no boat. Meanwhile, Clay got back on his feet. Tina took him back, but only after he apologized for being blind to the truth. They started counseling. Janine came over more often, with the kids, with a lemon loaf, with smiles that didn't look forced anymore. The house stayed quiet, and full, at peace. One afternoon, I found an old photo in the attic. Me, Delilah, and the kids on the front porch in '97. I almost tossed it, but I didn't, because that photo is proof of who I was, who I still am. Not a loser, not a background character, a builder, a father, a man who stood through the storm, and is still standing. 2 weeks had passed since Delilah tried to force her way back into the house. Since then, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, stillness. Not silence, not loneliness, just stillness. The kind that fills the air when you know the storm is past, but the clouds haven't left just yet. And I was right to be cautious, because that Wednesday morning, as I was flipping pancakes for Clay and my grandson Mason, who was visiting for the day, the doorbell rang. It was a courier, a clean-cut young man with a leather satchel and an apologetic smile. "Mr. Harlan?" "Yes." He handed me a cream-colored envelope. Certified letter from Abrams and Delaney Law Firm. He gave me a quick nod and turned back to his car. I stared at the envelope for a long moment before sliding my finger under the seal. The weight of it told me everything. Delilah wasn't done. Inside was a neatly typed letter, sharp enough to draw blood. "Dear Mr. Harlan, our client, Mrs. Delilah Harlan, is contesting the transfer of estate assets to the Harlan Family Trust on the grounds of emotional duress, financial manipulation, and lack of spousal consent. A formal petition will be filed with Summit County Probate Court within 10 business days. Regards, Maxwell Delaney, ESQ." I folded the letter and set it down next to the butter dish. "Dad," Clay asked from the table, "everything okay?" I poured more batter into the pan. "Your mother's lawyer says she wants to take me to court." I met with Miriam Chavez the next day. She read the letter without blinking, then leaned back in her chair, arms crossed. "She's bluffing," she said. "You sure? She doesn't have a leg to stand on. You didn't forge her signature. You didn't move marital property illegally. Everything you did is clean, documented, and within your rights. But," she paused, "she's hoping you'll panic. Settle. Offer her something just to make her go away." "Not this time." Miriam nodded. "Good. Then it's time to fight fire with facts." We went over every detail. Bank statements, property records, the updated will, the trust clause she had voluntarily acknowledged with her own signature months before the separation. But just to cover all angles, Miriam suggested we dig deeper into her closet, she said. See if any bones rattle. I hadn't considered that. But now that the gloves were off, it made sense. If Delilah wanted to make this ugly, I'd make it honest. Clay helped me go through the old file cabinets in the garage, where Delilah had once kept receipts, notes, even her old journals. That's where we found it, a faded black notebook. On the front, in her handwriting, it read, Manifestation Journal, 2019. Inside were pages of scribbled thoughts, wish lists, and affirmations. It started off harmless, stuff about self-confidence, travel goals, and saving for a luxury car. But on page 12, it took a turn. In her own handwriting. Goal, get house in my name. Wait until Walt retires. Less resistance. Convince him to set up survivorship clause. If he passes, the house stays mine. Tyler says timing is everything. Clay sat beside me, jaw clenched. She planned this, like a strategy. I nodded, flipping through more pages. Plans to start her new life with Tyler. Even budget breakdowns of what she expected to keep if I left quietly. One entry chilled me. If Walt's heart condition returns, I'll have to play dumb. Sympathy gets you lawyers on your side. I took a photo of every page. Miriam's eyes nearly lit on fire when I showed her. This isn't just leverage, she said. This is intent, premeditation, malicious foresight. She wasn't just cheating, she was plotting. We prepared our response. The trust was airtight. But this journal, it was dynamite. When Delilah's attorney sent the formal petition, full of dramatic language about emotional trauma and asset manipulation, Miriam responded with a single-page letter. Enclosed, you will find pages from Mrs. Harlan's own writings, detailing her explicit intent to defraud, manipulate, and scheme against her husband. Should your client wish to proceed, we'll be prepared to countersue for elder abuse, emotional fraud, and malicious intent. Sincerely, Miriam Chavez, ESQ****. I mailed it personally. Certified. Return receipt requested. A week passed. Then two. Then, a single text arrived from Clay while he was at work. Mom dropped the case. Her lawyer backed out. You won. I stared at the message. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel smug. I felt free. A few days later, I got a card in the mail. No return address. Inside, a short message in Delilah's handwriting. You always did play the long game. Enjoy the silence. D. I folded the card, set it in the fireplace, and lit a match. As the flames curled around her words, I whispered, enjoy your echo. That evening, Clay brought over Tina and the kids. Janine showed up too, with a bottle of wine and that lemon loaf I always loved. We ate dinner out back under the string lights, laughter rising into the dusk. I watched my grandchildren chase fireflies while my kids talked about starting a family vacation tradition. For the first time in years, I looked around and saw only the people who stayed. Not because they had to, but because they chose to. And me, I finally stopped surviving and started living. 2 months after Delilah dropped the court case, life began to taste different, like black coffee finally sweetened, like air after a long storm. I started clearing out the garage, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I was ready to sell the house, ready to let go of walls that had seen too many one-sided conversations, too many silent dinners. It was a Saturday morning, sun soft through the windows, when a knock came at the door. 3 slow taps. No urgency. No delivery van outside. Just a woman, mid-30s, olive coat, brown curls tucked under a faded baseball cap. She looked at me like she wasn't sure I was real. Mr. Harlan? Yes. She bit her lip and held out a cardboard box, taped sloppily at the sides. My name is Rachel Kent, Tyler Kent's ex-wife. Can I come in for a moment? The name hit me like a slap in slow motion. Tyler Kent, the man my wife threw her marriage away for. The name I saw lit up on her phone night after night, long after I got to bed. I stepped aside. We sat in the living room, me on the recliner, her on the edge of the couch like she didn't plan to stay long. She set the box down on the coffee table. I know this is strange, but you need to see what's inside. I didn't open it. Not yet. Rachel took a breath. I left Tyler 3 years ago. He lied to me, cheated constantly. But I stayed for our son, for stability. That was my mistake. She looked up, her eyes glassy. When I finally left, he moved on fast. Your wife was just one of many, but she stuck around longer. I know, I said. She was planning a whole future with him. Rachel nodded. He was planning a future, too, just not with her. He talked about finding a woman with a house, a retirement account, something to ride into early freedom, as he put it. She slid the box closer to me. I found this in a storage unit he stopped paying for. They call me because my name was still listed as the backup contact. It's all his files, notes, pictures, recordings. I stared at the box, my pulse ticking louder. Why give it to me? I asked. Because I think he hurt more people than just you and me. And because I saw your name. A lot. I opened the box. Inside were neatly stacked folders labeled things like DH, financial, retirement loopholes, and contingency property transfer. The one that stopped me cold was marked simply, Plan Walt. Inside, a photo of me, taken from a distance outside our local grocery store. A handwritten timeline of my retirement date, Delilah's birthday, and a note that said, House flip ready by Q2. Push D to move faster. Voice recordings on a USB drive labeled Convos, leverage. I sat back, stunned. He wasn't just cheating with my wife. He was stalking me, studying, preparing, like I was a mark. Like my entire life was a stepping stone in his ladder to an easier life. Rachel stayed quiet while I looked through everything. Finally, she said, I couldn't do much when I was married to him, but I can do this now. Why now? I asked. Because I needed to reclaim something too, she said. He made me small, made me doubt everything. But I kept it because someone might need to be warned. Someone like you. I nodded slowly. You're not small, I said. You're brave. This matters. That night, I sat at the kitchen table and listened to the audio files. Tyler's voice came through clearly, smug and casual. She's practically begging to hand me the house. Once it's in her name, I'm out. I can flip it, take half the retirement, and maybe get something closer to Florida. Another file. Walt? He won't fight. He's one of those quiet guys. Too proud to scream, too broken to stop you. I smiled to myself. He was wrong on both counts. The next morning, I returned to Miriam with the box. She combed through it like a detective, solving her final case before retirement. These files, she said, this is legal gold. You think they'll do anything now that Delilah dropped the suit? She won't be the one in trouble, Miriam replied. But Tyler? He might be. She contacted a friend in the DA's office. Turns out, Tyler Kent had a history. 2 other women. Same pattern. Emotional manipulation. Financial exploitation. Now, with Rachel's box, they had evidence. A week later, the DA's office launched a quiet investigation into Tyler Kent. Rachel gave a formal statement. I handed over the files. Delilah? I heard she moved out of town. No job. No Tyler. Just silence. And me? I listed the house. Moved into a quiet, 2-bedroom place near Janine's. I set up weekly dinners with the kids, morning walks with Clay, and fishing Saturdays with Jonah again. The weight was gone. The house was just a place. The life ahead, that was the home. It was a rainy Tuesday when the letter came. No stamp, no envelope, just a folded page slid under my front door, damp at the corners. I picked it up slowly, like it might bite. Walt, I heard about the investigation. I assume you had something to do with it. It's fine. You win. I'm leaving town for good. Don't worry. You'll never hear from me again. But if you want to say goodbye, I'll be at the old bench in Franklin Park at 4 p.m. Delilah. I stared at her handwriting for a long time. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel triumph. I felt a question rising. Did I need to go? Did I need to see her one last time? Part of me wanted to rip the paper in half. But another part, the part that had loved her once, wanted to look her in the eyes and close the book. Franklin Park hadn't changed. The bench near the duck pond was still worn from weather and time. We used to come here when the kids were young, when life was simpler, when her laugh was still real and not sharpened like a knife. She was already sitting there when I arrived. Hair pulled back, no makeup, a duffel bag at her feet. She looked up, surprised I came. You look good, she said, almost like she meant it. I didn't respond. I just sat beside her, 2 feet of silence between us. I guess this is the part where you say, I told you so, she muttered. No, I said calmly. This is the part where we stop pretending. She turned to face me, her voice brittle. You think I planned all of it, but it wasn't like that. At first, Tyler made me feel seen. You stopped seeing me a long time ago. I nodded. That might be true, but I never stopped loving you. That shut her up. I was there, I continued. Through every crisis, every birthday, every night the kids were sick. You were the one who stopped showing up. I was tired, she snapped. So was I, but I stayed. She looked away, blinking fast. I didn't think you'd fight back, she whispered. That's the problem, I said. You never really knew me. For a long while, we sat in the quiet. Just the ducks, the wind, the ache of two people who once promised each other forever. "I'm sorry," she finally said. Not tearful, not dramatic, just soft, real. "I know that doesn't fix anything, but I needed to say it." I looked at her. "I forgive you," I said. "Not for you. For me." She blinked. "I don't hate you, Delilah. I'm just done holding a seat in my life for someone who never really wanted to be there." Her lip trembled, but she nodded. "I'll be gone by tomorrow," she said. I stood up. "You already were." I walked away without looking back. Not because I was cold, but because I was finally free. That night, I poured myself a glass of iced tea and sat on my new porch, overlooking a quiet street where kids rode bikes and neighbors waved. A life was unfolding, my life. A life not centered around fixing someone else's brokenness, but around rediscovering my own strength. Clay called. He and Tina were expecting again. Janine texted. The kids wanted to sleep over Friday night. I leaned back in my chair, let the night air fill my lungs. I wasn't just healing, I was whole. The invitation came in a thick cream envelope, addressed in handwriting I didn't recognize. "Mr. Walter Harlan, please join us as we honor your 40 years of community service at the Summit Town Hall Appreciation Gala." I stared at it, surprised. I hadn't done any of it for recognition. The town knew me as the guy who fixed fences for widows, mowed lawns for the elderly without being asked, and ran the holiday food drive from the back of my old pickup. Still, the thought of standing in front of a crowd made my gut stir. I almost didn't go, but Clay insisted. "Dad," he said, "it's time people say thank you. And more importantly, it's time you let them." The town hall was full that Saturday night. Folding chairs, strings of lights, and the smell of potluck casseroles. Janine and Clay sat in the front row, beaming. Mason waved a hand-painted "Go Grandpa" sign. They called my name last. I walked up slow but steady in my cleanest suit and a heart that beat calm. The mayor, a thin man with kind eyes, read off a list of things I'd forgotten I ever did. Built a ramp for Ms. Bailey when she broke her hip. Drove a stranger to the VA twice a week for 6 months. Repaired the roof at the old shelter after a storm. Out of pocket. The crowd clapped. But what hit hardest was the whisper I heard from the back row. "He's the quiet one, the steady one, the one who shows up." I stepped to the podium and looked out over a sea of familiar faces. Some older, some new. My father used to say, "A man's name is the only thing he truly owns," I began. I didn't always understand that. Not until this past year. I paused. I lost things. My marriage. My house. A version of myself that spent too long being quiet. People leaned in. But I gained something too. A voice. A second wind. A reason to keep showing up for myself this time. Soft applause. I scanned the room. That's when I saw her. In the back. Delilah. Hair tied up. Standing alone. She didn't clap. She just watched. And that was enough. I nodded to her once. Brief. Final. Then I turned back to the mic. "My name is Walter Harlan," I said. "And I'm not a loser. I'm a builder. Of fences. Of trust. Of life." The crowd rose. Applauding not just a man, but the quiet storm he'd become. The morning after the gala, I sat on my porch with my usual cup of black coffee. The sky was pale orange and the street still sleepy. The applause from last night still echoed in my chest. Not because it was loud, but because it was honest. Then the mail came. Among the usual bills and donation flyers was a slim envelope, handwritten in the curling, careful script I hadn't seen in years. From Martin Jasper, Jasper Creek Ranch. My breath caught. Martin and I served together back at home. After the war, he'd moved out to Montana, started a cattle ranch. We kept in touch for a while. Christmas cards, the occasional phone call. Then life got busy. Kids, work, time. I opened the letter. "Walt, I've been hearing your name all the way out here. Word travels, even through old vets and small-town barbers. I heard about the divorce, the trial, the speech. What I didn't hear, but already knew, was that you'd come through with grace. About an old bunkhouse on the ranch that's empty, quiet, peaceful, needs a bit of fixing, but nothing a man like you couldn't handle. If you're looking to trade ghosts for sunsets, you've got a place here. No expectations, Just friendship. Think about it. Martin, I read it twice. Then a third time. A smile crept across my face, not wide, not flashy. Just true. That afternoon, I sat with Janine and Clay under the oak tree in the backyard. Told them about Martin's offer. Janine blinked back tears. Dad, are you thinking of going? I'm thinking of starting, I said. Somewhere new, somewhere quiet, somewhere earned. Clay smiled slowly. You deserve it, Dad. Every sunrise out there. That night, I packed a single bag. Not out of sadness, but with peace. I left the past where it belonged, in old frames and closed drawers. Because the future, it was calling from Jasper Creek. And this time, I was ready to answer. Jasper Creek was everything Martin promised and more. Open skies that went on forever, hills that rolled like soft shoulders, and silence so pure it made your ears ring. I fixed up the bunkhouse in 3 weeks. Replaced the roof, patched the porch, painted the shutters barn red, just because it made me smile. My hands hurt in that good kind of way, like work that matters. Martin was slower now, bad knee, short breath, but his spirit was the same. Every morning, we shared coffee and stories that ran deeper than war. At night, we watched the sun bleed over the ridge in total, perfect peace. I hadn't felt this alive in decades. One crisp morning, Martin brought me a letter from town. He held it up with a smirk. Looks like someone back home hasn't forgotten about you. I opened it carefully. It was written in messy but determined handwriting. Dear Grandpa Walt, Mom helped me write this. I miss you. I told my teacher about how you helped people and how you built the shelter roof even when your back hurt. She said I should write a story about you for our Heroes Project. So I did. I hope you come visit soon. We save your chair at dinner. Love, Mason. My chest cracked wide open. Not from pain, from pride. That evening, I wrote back, Dear Mason, I miss you too, kiddo. More than all the miles between us. I'm building something new out here. A place that feels like the middle of a good dream. But no matter where I go, I carry you with me. Being your grandpa is the best title I've ever had. I'll be home soon. Not because I'm lost, but because some stories deserve to be told in person. As I sealed the envelope, the wind swept through the valley. Not cold, just full, like a chapter ending with another one already waiting.